Okay, so now we've downloaded QAPP and installed it on the computer. So how do we start using it? So there's this getting started document that opens up to this PDF document that's on the website, QAPP Getting Started. So we start it from the Windows Start menu by choosing Programs. And don't look for QAPP, look for Lakes Environmental. And I have two programs from Lakes Environmental. One is QAPP and one is WR Plot View, which is a free program that you can download from the Lakes Environmental website to generate windroses. And I use that quite a bit. It's very nice and simple. QAPP is accessed this way. You click on it and it opens up this screen where you could, if you wanted, look at their website. And I'm going to say OK, and then the first screen shows this nice picture of the monitoring platform at the TAM Center outside the EPA offices in Las Vegas. And you can see even on this first screen we do have a help button. So on every single screen there is a help button, and I'm going to create a new project by clicking on this. And the way QAPP works, it actually creates a database for every QAPP that you write because they're tables and default text, etc. So just leave the folder structure the way it wants it to be, and then it can reassemble the database every time you open your project. I'm going to assume that I am writing a QAPP for a TEOM, and I'm going to call it TEOM example, and I'm going to say save. And it contains a space. Ooh, that's good to know. Save. Okay, and so now it's creating all the default text that it will be doing for any QAPP. And as soon as it finds out that I'm going to be monitoring using a TEOM, it's going to start suggesting even more default text. But at this point, it's just creating a blank template QAPP with basically, it doesn't even know exactly what headers it's supposed to use yet. So the first screen asks for information, and the way the program works is it generates at any point during the work or at the end a QAPP in which it types in, wherever the name of the tribe appears, it types that in. So the idea is that it minimizes your work by going through and putting in repeated information. So I'm going to call myself the Melinda tribe, and I'm the Melinda's office, and I am going to call myself environmental quality. Okay, you can see over here we've so far made 0% progress, but we can click the next button now. And notice that on every subsequent screen, except for the first one, there's also a help button here that you can click on, and it opens up a help that's relevant to this particular window that you're working in. So I'm going to click Next, and now this is the next screen, and it's very important because it asks you what category of QAPP you are writing. So category 1 is the default, and that's the type of QAPP that requires all 24 elements because you are going to be making measurements to compare against a standard. So whether it's National Ambient Air Quality Standards or water standards, whenever you make measurements and you compare against a standard, the suggestion from EPA and others is that you use all 24 elements. If you're doing projects that perhaps don't require as much stringency, you could have a category 2, 3, or 4 project, all the way down to category 4, which might mean that you have some equipment that you're taking around to schools to educate people about the environment, and EPA has asked you to write a QAPP, and that would be a category 4 project, which I think requires only 8 of the 24 elements. On every page there's tips that explain something about that particular screen that you're working in or something about QAPP. I'm making measurements with the TOM to compare against the PM10 standards. So I'm going to be using all 24 elements. So I select category 1 and then I click next. And now it says, okay, what are you monitoring for? It has a selection list, and you can check more than one, although I find it easier just to work on one pollutant at a time, for the criteria pollutants. And then also other might be, for example, anything where you have to get data from a lab. So if you click other, or requiring a lab analysis, or other on-site instrumentation, and that might be like if you're making handheld measurements, you have some sort of turbidity meter, or perhaps you're measuring gamma radiation rates from soil because there's going to be a housing construction there and you want to determine if you need to make more measurements or the building should be built elsewhere. And whenever either of the others are checked, it asks you, okay, what is it that put in this box what pollutant you're monitoring for. I'm going to say cancel, and I'm going to select PM10 continuous. And once you select any one of these pollutants, then you tell it, okay, how many monitors, how many PM10 monitors do you have? I just have one. So now I'm going to click next. Okay, and now you can see on the next screen it's finally populated this navigation tree on the left, and it says that we've made 3% progress. So this screen asks you how many sites, at how many sites is this pollutant measured, and we only have one site. And here is where we start with the default language, because now it knows that you're measuring continuous PM10 data, and it starts suggesting that you may want to have this particular text. So what I've done is I've assembled recommended text based upon EPA recommendations, template QAPPs, tribal QAPPs, state and county QAPPs that I've gotten a hold of, and put in example text. It's very important that you read this and make sure that it is appropriate for your use, but in a lot of cases it really might be. So now we see that we read this and we say, wait a second, I don't like this. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to put in, I am monitoring outside my office at one site. And then I say, okay, accept, but what did that example say? Maybe that was better. So you can click example and it brings the example back, and what's nice, it is actually tacks it on to the end of what I typed in there, so I could combine them or decided to delete something else. Or if you've got language written in your grant, or maybe a draft or an old QAPP that you can copy and paste from, you can copy and paste text from another document and then just paste it into here. The important thing is to click accept, because it doesn't really know if you're finished with this, and you want it to be put into your QAPP, at least in draft form, until you click that accept button, and then it's no longer purple. You can see that the navigation tree now has 3 items here that are in green, which means they're completed. You can navigate between different elements using this navigation tree. So for example, we can go to project description and say, performance requirements have been specified in Appendix D. Ooh. And any information that's in caps, you have to make sure that you change. I put them in caps because it's easier to see them both here and also in the exported report. But obviously designation numbers for your equipment are required in this panel. On every page we have tips, and sometimes we have URLs, EPA's URLs, or different websites that might have good information for you that you can click on. Again, at any page you can click on this help button and it brings up a box that's specifically addressed to what's going on this page. you can see that there are quite a few elements that have to be filled out because we're doing a Category 1 QAPP, and as you complete them and as you click Next, now I have to click Accept here before I click Next or it won't show up as being done. I'm just going to say, okay, that's good, but I'm going to go back now. Where was I? I skipped far ahead. Where was I? I can go back and use this navigation tree to go back and forth. If there are multiple tabs on a particular screen, that means that these might be separate paragraphs or several sets of paragraphs within one element, which in this case is background. The other thing that you might notice is that the elements are not in order. In the final QAPP, they are put in order. But we decided that it would be most useful for you to write a QAPP starting from the most important question first, which is, why are we making these measurements? And everything needs to be from why we are making these measurements. So what kind of measurements we make, where we make them, what sort of data and reliability of the data do we have to have. So we've asked the questions in an order that's more logical rather than just go in order starting from the signature page. And that's important too, because a lot of times when people get to the really important stuff, which is like element 7, data quality indicators, people get really tired. So we've started with the most important stuff first. And you can finish work at any time, and it automatically saves your work. So we're going to stop this introduction right now, and I'll talk about generating reports and how to use the tables in the next podcast. So let's say it's time for lunch and you want to finish up. How can you be sure that it saves? All you have to do is close it, and it says, are you sure you want to close QAPP? Yes, and it saves all the text that you typed in.